The harmony was dying. Captain stood on the bridge of her diplomatic vessel and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. The ship had dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 hours ago, somewhere on the edge of a star system that their maps barely recognized. The main engine was silent. Life support was failing. They had 72 hours before the air ran out. "Captain," said her navigator, a young named. His blue skin had gone pale with fear. "I have found a planet. It is the only one close enough to reach with our emergency thrusters." Looked at the display. A small blue world third from its sun. She knew that world. Every diplomat in the Galactic Concord knew it, though none had ever visited. "Earth," she said. "Yes, Captain. It is listed in our database as a Class 7 developing world. The official recommendation is to avoid contact." Had been a diplomat for 40 years. She had negotiated peace treaties between species that had been at war for centuries. She had talked her way out of prisons and into palaces, but she had never broken the contact protocols before. She looked at her crew. 23, all of them looking at her with trust in their eyes. 23 lives that depended on her next decision. "Set course for Earth," she said. The emergency thrusters fired. The broken ship began its slow drift toward the pale blue dot. Expected panic when they arrived. She expected primitive weapons pointed at the sky, or perhaps a complete failure to notice them at all. What she did not expect was efficiency. Within 6 hours of their distress signal, humans had responded, not with fear or confusion, but with questions, practical questions. What kind of fuel did they need? What was the atmosphere composition inside their ship? Did anyone require medical attention? The Harmony landed in a vast flat area that the humans called Nevada, walked down the boarding ramp with her senior officers, her hearts beating fast in her chest. This was first contact. This moment would be remembered forever. A group of humans waited for them. Some wore military uniforms, others wore white coats, and one woman, standing slightly apart from the rest, wore ordinary clothes and held a clipboard. "Welcome to Earth," said a man in uniform. "I'm General. We understand you need repairs." "Yes," said. Her translator device worked perfectly with the human language. "Our faster-than-light engine has failed. We do not have the materials to fix it ourselves." The general nodded. "We'll do what we can. In the meantime, Deb here will help coordinate your crew's needs." He gestured to the woman with the clipboard. The woman smiled and stepped forward. "Deb Martinez, Hospitality Coordination. How many of you are there, and do you have any dietary requirements I should know about?" Blinked. She had expected scientists. She had expected military commanders. She had not expected someone whose job was apparently to make sure visitors were comfortable. 23, she said. "We eat proteins and carbohydrates. We cannot consume your local vegetation without processing." "Got it? Any allergies?" And just like that, found herself discussing food preferences with a human named Deb while, behind her, teams of engineers swarmed over her broken ship. The next 3 days were unlike anything had experienced in her long career. The humans did not simply repair the engine. They studied it. They asked questions about how it worked, why it was designed that way, whether alternative approaches had been considered. They took notes. They argued with each other. They stayed awake for impossible lengths of time, fueled by a bitter black liquid they called coffee. Deb offered a cup on the second day. "Try it," she said. "Everyone does eventually." Took a sip. It was terrible. Bitter and hot, and somehow both too strong and not strong enough. She handed the cup back. "I appreciate the offer," she said diplomatically, "but I do not think this is for me." Deb just smiled. That's what everyone says at first. On the third day, a young engineer named asked to speak with. He was thin and tired-looking, with dark circles under his eyes. He had been working on the engine for 36 hours straight. "Captain," he said, "I have a question about your FTL matrix." "Yes." Why is it designed this way? He showed her a diagram on a thin device humans called a tablet. This configuration creates energy loss at every transition point. If you moved these components here and reconfigured the flow pattern like this. He pulled out a napkin and sketched quickly. You would get 40% better efficiency. Stared at the napkin, then she stared at the napkin again. This design, she said slowly, was created by the greatest engineers of the Galactic Concord. They spent 200 years perfecting it. Oh looked embarrassed. I didn't mean to criticize, I was just curious. You did this in 36 hours, on a napkin. Well, the napkin part was just now, the math I did last night, he shrugged. I couldn't sleep, your engine is really interesting. Felt something cold move through her. She had been a diplomat long enough to recognize a moment of profound importance. This young human, who had never seen a faster-than-light engine before last week, had just improved on technology that was older than his entire species. How, she asked. Your people do not have faster-than-light travel. How can you improve something you have never seen before? Scratched his head. He looked genuinely puzzled by the question. I don't know, he said. We're just good at fixing things, I guess. It's kind of our whole deal. Deb appeared at his elbow with another cup of coffee. He's being modest, she said. Humans have been breaking things and putting them back together better for our entire history. It's what we do. Took the cup without thinking. She drank it without tasting it. Her mind was elsewhere, turning over the implications of what she had just learned. The Galactic Concord had dismissed Earth as a developing world, a primitive species not ready for contact. But looking at, and his napkin sketch, looking at the teams of engineers who had learned alien technology in days, looking at the efficient organization that had turned first contact into a repair operation, began to wonder if the Concord had made a terrible mistake. She looked down at the cup in her hand. It was coffee, of course. She took another sip. It still tasted terrible, but somehow she did not mind as much as before. The repairs took 2 weeks. Had expected it to take 2 months if the humans could manage it at all. Instead, they finished in 14 days. And when she tested the Harmony's engine, it performed 40% better than it ever had before. We made a few modifications, said. He looked sheepish. I hope that's okay. Did not know how to respond. The shipwrights who had built this vessel had spent their entire careers mastering its technology. A team of humans who had never seen faster-than-light travel before had surpassed them in 2 weeks. It is more than okay, she said finally. It is remarkable. She should have left then. Her ship was repaired. Her crew was healthy. Protocol demanded that she return to the Concord and report on what she had found, but did not leave. She told herself it was because she needed to understand these humans better before making her report. In truth, she was simply fascinated. Deb had become something like a friend during those 2 weeks. The hospitality coordinator had a gift for making people comfortable, regardless of how many hearts they had or what color their skin was. She introduced to the concept of the coffee break. These were periods during the workday when humans stopped whatever they were doing to drink coffee and talk about nothing in particular. This seems inefficient, observed during her first coffee break. Should you not be working? Deb laughed. This is working. This is where the real ideas happen. People think better when they're relaxed. Did not believe her, but over the next few days she began to understand. During coffee breaks, engineers discussed problems they were stuck on. Scientists shared ideas that had come to them in dreams. People from different departments who never worked together found connections they would never have discovered otherwise. The coffee break was not a pause from work. It was work in disguise. She learned other things about humans too. They were contradictory in ways that made no sense. They fought wars over invisible lines drawn on maps, but they would cross oceans to rescue strangers. They poisoned their own planet with pollution while simultaneously fighting to save it. They created beautiful music and art. then used those same creative talents to build weapons. How do you explain it? Asked Deb one afternoon. Your species seems determined to destroy itself, and yet you are also capable of such kindness. Deb thought about this for a moment. We're complicated, she said. We contain multitudes. The same person can be cruel in the morning and generous in the afternoon. We're always fighting between our worst instincts and our best ones. And which side wins? Depends on the day, depends on the person, but I like to think on average we're getting better. Deb smiled. Slowly. It was during one of these coffee breaks that learned about the. She was sitting with and several other engineers in a small room filled with coffee machines and uncomfortable chairs. They were discussing theoretical physics when mentioned something he had found in the Harmony's communication logs. There's a lot of encrypted traffic about something called the Dominion, he said casually. We've been picking up similar signals from deep space for a few years now. Never could figure out what they meant. Felt her blood freeze. The cup of coffee in her hand suddenly felt very heavy. What do you know about the, she asked. Her voice came out strange. The engineers noticed. Not much, said. His eyes had sharpened. He was watching her face carefully. Should we? Set down her coffee. She looked at the faces around her. These strange, brilliant, impossible humans who had fixed her ship and improved it. They deserved to know the truth. The Dominion, she said, is a conquering force. They have been systematically invading galactic conquered worlds for the past 50 years. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. When they conquer a planet, they strip it of resources and move on. The room was very quiet. And these signals you've been picking up, continued. They are likely scout ships, mapping potential targets. Pulled out his tablet. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. Show me, he said. Show me what a transmission looks like. Did, and as they compared her examples to the signals humans had intercepted, the picture became clear. They had noticed Earth. They had been watching it for years, and according to the trajectory calculations ran on the spot, they were coming. 18 months, said. His voice was flat. If these projections are right, they'll be here in 18 months. The coffee in stomach turned sour. She had brought death to these people. If she had never come here, if she had let her ship drift into the void, the humans might have had more time. They might have developed on their own, built their own defenses. Now they would know that Earth had contact with the conquered. They would come sooner. They would come harder. I am sorry, she said. I should not have come here. Looked at her, his face was pale but his eyes were steady. No, he said, you should have. If you hadn't, we wouldn't know they were coming. Now we have 18 months to prepare. Prepare? Almost laughed. They have conquered civilizations far more advanced than yours. You have no fleet. You have no weapons capable of fighting them. 18 months is not enough time to build what you would need. The room was silent, expected fear. She expected despair. What she saw instead on the faces around her was something else entirely. It was focus. It was determination. It was the same look had worn when he first examined her broken engine. You said your engine design took 200 years to develop, said. We improved it in 2 weeks. That is not the same thing, building a fleet. Humans went from the first airplane to landing on our moon in 66 years, interrupted. When we have a deadline, we work fast. He stood up. I need to make some calls. He left the room. One by one, the other engineers followed, was left alone with her cold coffee and her confusion. Deb found her there an hour later. I heard, Deb said. She sat down across from Big News. They are going to try to fight, said. It is suicide. Maybe, Deb poured herself a cup of coffee. But that's humans for you. We don't go quietly. I should leave. I should return to the conquered and warn them. You could do that. Deb took a sip. Or you could stay, help us prepare. You know how they fight. That knowledge could save lives. Thought about the conquered, about protocol, about the proper diplomatic channels that demanded she report to her superiors immediately. Then she thought about and his napkin calculations, about Deb and her coffee breaks, about a species that fixed engines they had never seen before and talked about landing on moons like it was nothing special. She picked up her cold coffee and drank it in one long gulp. "How long," she asked, "would it take your species to build a fleet?" Deb smiled. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." 6 months later, stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and wondered if she was dreaming. The ship around her was ugly. There was no other word for it. It was covered in asymmetrical additions, field modifications, and what the humans called upgrades. It looked like someone had built a warship out of spare parts and determination, which, reflected, was exactly what had happened. But according to every scanner she possessed, the Defiance was also the most heavily armed vessel she had ever seen. The secret had lasted about a week. When Earth's governments learned about there was panic. Markets crashed. Riots broke out. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. For 7 days, it seemed like humanity might tear itself apart before the aliens even arrived. Then something changed. Never fully understood what happened during that second week. Humans called it different things. The turning, the moment, the wake-up call. Whatever they called it, the effect was the same. Nations that had been rivals for centuries began sharing resources. Scientists who had competed their entire careers started working together. Military forces that had been pointed at each other turned their weapons toward the stars. "Humans are good at fighting each other," Deb explained to One Day. "But we're even better at fighting together when something threatens all of us." The shipyards rose in orbit within the first month. They were crude at first, assembled from space stations and satellites that had been designed for other purposes. But they worked, and as the weeks passed, they grew. Provided everything she could. Conquered ship designs, though the humans mostly ignored them. Information about tactics and weaknesses. Knowledge about materials and construction techniques. The humans absorbed it all, processed it through their strange minds, and produced something new. "Why did you change the shield configuration?" asked One Day. They were reviewing the Defiance's plans. "The Conquered design is more elegant." "Elegant, yes," agreed, "but fragile. The Conquered design fails if you lose one generator. Ours has redundancy. You can knock out half our shield generators and we'll still be at 60% coverage." "That is wasteful." "That's human engineering," grinned. "We plan for things to go wrong because they always do." The Defiance was the flagship of a fleet of 12 ships. 12 ships, built in 6 months by a species that had not had faster-than-light travel 8 months ago. It should have been impossible. But humans, was learning, had a complicated relationship with the word impossible. Deep in the ship, there was a room that they found disturbing. The humans called it the morale station. It contained soft chairs, tables, machines that dispensed coffee at all hours, and something called a ping-pong table. Crew members were required to spend time there during their shifts. "This is a warship," had protested when she first saw the plans. "There is no room for recreation." "There's always room for recreation," Admiral had replied. He was the human in charge of the fleet, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a voice like gravel. "Tired soldiers make mistakes. Comfortable soldiers think clearly. We learned that the hard way." Now, standing on the bridge as the fleet moved into position, understood. The human crew around her was calm. They joked with each other. They drank coffee from portable cups. They were about to face a force that had conquered dozens of worlds, and they were relaxed. Not careless, she realized, prepared. They had trained. They had rested. They had done everything they could, and now they were ready to do more. They arrived at noon on a Tuesday. Their fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system exactly where had predicted. 23 warships, sleek and terrible. They did not waste resources on anything unnecessary. Their vessels were pure killing machines. "They're hailing us," said the communications officer. "Standard surrender demand." Admiral nodded, put it on speaker. The voice that filled the bridge was cold and precise. They did not waste words any more than they wasted materials. "Species of Earth, you are conquered. Surrender now, and some of you will be permitted to serve the Dominion. Resist, and you will be eliminated." The message ended. The bridge was silent. "Well," Admiral said, "that's not very friendly." He picked up his coffee and took a long sip. "Communications, please send our response." "Yes, sir, what should I say?" The Admiral smiled. "Play them some music, something with energy. I want them to know who they're dealing with." Did not understand the purpose of broadcasting music at an enemy fleet. But as the opening notes of something called heavy metal began to play across all frequencies, she saw the effect it had on the formations. They hesitated. They had never encountered a species that responded to a surrender demand with aggressive music. That hesitation cost them. "All ships," Admiral said calmly, "engage." The battle was chaos, beautiful, terrible chaos. Tactics were precise and mathematical. They moved in formations. They targeted weak points. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same approaches that had worked for centuries. Human tactics were none of those things. The human fleet scattered and regrouped in patterns that made no sense. Ships that appeared to be retreating suddenly turned and fired. Cargo vessels that looked harmless exploded as decoys, blinding sensors at critical moments. A damaged fighter piloted by a young woman named Sarah, sister, learned later, flew directly at a command ship, ejecting at the last moment before the impact destroyed both vessels. "They're insane," whispered as she watched the battle unfold. "All of them completely insane." "Yes," Admiral agreed. He had not stopped smiling. "That's the point." By the end of the day, 16 ships had been destroyed. The remaining 7 were in full retreat. The human fleet had lost 4 vessels, but all crews had been evacuated in time. "Should we pursue?" asked the tactical officer. Admiral shook his head. "Let them go." Was confused. "Why? You have them at a disadvantage. You could finish them." "We could." The Admiral set down his coffee cup. "But dead enemies don't send messages. I want them to go home and tell everyone what happened here today. I want every species in the Dominion to know that Earth isn't worth the cost. And if they come back with more ships, then we'll build more ships." Looked out at the stars, at the debris field that had been a conquering fleet, at the pale blue dot of Earth in the distance. "We're good at that." 1 week later, prepared to leave. The Harmony had been upgraded again during the battle preparations. It was faster now, better shielded, equipped with communication systems that could reach the conquered in hours instead of days. The humans had insisted. "You'll need to tell them what happened here," said. He had come to see her off. So had Deb and Admiral and dozens of others who had become something like friends during the past months. "The conquered needs to know that things have changed." "They will not believe me," said. "A Class 7 world defeating with ships built in 6 months. They will think I have lost my mind." "Then show them." Handed her a data crystal. "Everything we learned, all our designs, our tactics, our improvements to your FTL systems. Give it to them freely. We're not going to hide what we can do." Took the crystal. It felt heavier than it should have. "Why?" she asked. "Why share this? You could keep it secret, use it as an advantage." Shrugged. "What's the point of an advantage if everyone else gets conquered? They are everyone's problem. Might as well solve it together." Deb stepped forward. She was holding a thermos and a small bag. "For the journey," she said. "Coffee and beans so you can make more." Took the gifts. She did not trust herself to speak. "Tell them something for me," Admiral said. He had been quiet until now, standing back and letting the others say their goodbyes. "Tell your conquered that we're friendly. We don't want war with anyone who doesn't want war with us. We're happy to trade, to share, to work together." He paused. His kind eyes turned hard for just a moment. but also tell them that we're really, really good at building things when we need to. And that includes weapons. Nodded, she understood. The message was not a threat. It was information. Useful information for anyone deciding how to approach the small blue world on the edge of nowhere. She boarded her ship. She ran through the pre-flight checks. She watched Earth shrink in her as the Harmony rose through the atmosphere and into the void. The human fleet was still there, patrolling. Beyond them, she could see the construction yards, already building the next generation of ships. 12 vessels had driven back the. How many would there be in a year? In 5 years? In a generation? Did not know, but she suspected the Galactic Concord was about to find out. She opened the thermos Deb had given her. The smell of coffee filled the bridge. She poured a cup and took a sip. It still tasted terrible. She smiled anyway. Outside her window, Earth was just a pale blue dot again. A small world on the edge of a small solar system. A Class 7 developing world, according to the old records. Made a mental note to update those records when she returned. She activated the faster-than-light engine, 40% more efficient than when she arrived, and watched the stars stretch into lines around her. The humans had given her more than repairs. They had given her hope. And coffee. They had also given her a lot of coffee. She took another sip and smiled as the Harmony carried her home.